You don't have to static jog at the traffic light, it's just immediate.
the awkwardness of just like,
Yeah.
then the driver's just like staring at you. So what do you think about this upcoming May 2022 BTO launch? This is 99 Perspectives and we're going to talk more about it today. Hi everyone, my name is Eliani and welcome to our first episode of 99 Perspectives. So this is where we will discuss property trends, new launches, reviews, controversial property topics, and basically anything related to real estate in Singapore. Today, we're going to share our perspective on the May 2022 BTO launch, and of course, we need a market expert. So here we have Terence, who is our editorial content editor. Okay, Terence, this is your first cameo on our YouTube channel. So maybe you want to give a brief introduction about yourself.
Sure, thanks Eliani. I'm Terence, I'm the content editor for 99.co, the insider section of the site with a team of writers. Basically, we cover stories, insights about the property sector.
Okay, so if you guys read our editorial pieces, right, it's probably Terence behind it and a group of writers. So yeah, good job, Terence. Really insightful. Okay, just a TLDR on this May exercise. There are 6 sites spread across 5 locations with a total of 5,330 units. So there are 4 sites launching in a mature estate, which includes Queenstown, Toa Payoh, and 2 in Bukit Merah. So the other 2 sites are in a non-mature estate, which are Yishun and Jurong West. Okay, so Terence, you want to maybe give them a brief introduction on the number of units and the unit type?
Maybe we'll start with Queenstown. So Queenstown, basically it's a mature estate, only 3 and 4 room flat options across 860 units. Then we have Jurong West, which is a slightly larger project with 1,010 units. It's a non-mature estate. It has 2 room flexi, 3, 4 and 5 room flat options. Then we have Toa Payoh, which is another mature estate. It's slightly smaller, 380 units. 2 room, 3 room and 4 room flat options. And then we have Yishun, which is a non-mature estate with 640 units, 2 room, 4 room and 5 room options. So similarly with Jurong West. So Jurong West and Yishun have a 5 room option for home buyers. And finally, we have Bukit Merah, which has 2 plots. The one at Alexandra View, that's 3 room and 4 room options with some 2 room rental units set aside, 780 units. And then the Alexandra View one. And then we have the Henderson Road one, which is the largest project with 1,660 units. Also 3 and 4 room options. The Bukit Merah one is a mature estate.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Okay, so Terence, I just want to pick your brain a little. Of course, you have been in the real estate industry longer than I have. So maybe you want to start the ball rolling by discussing which particular project actually stands out to you and how competitive do you think this launch would be?
Well, I guess you probably agree with me, Eliani, that the closer it is to the city, the more popular it will be, right? I guess for this particular BTO May 2022 exercise, the one in Bukit Merah will be quite competitive, especially the one at probably Henderson Road, 1,660 units, and then maybe the Alexandra View one, and probably the Toa Payoh one. I wouldn't rule out the Queenstown project as well. It's very close to Holland Village, for example. So I would think that these 3 locations may see higher application rates compared to Yishun and Jurong West.
Let's touch on the pricing first. What do you think of the price point for this launch? Is it too expensive? And which sites are actually worth the price?
Okay, so like every BTO exercise, you won't have the price until HDB announces the launch, which would be sometime in mid to end May. But one way to kind of estimate the price is to look at past data. So BTO projects nearer to the city, a 4-room flat, for example, would likely range between 530,000 to 700,000. As you move further away from the city, for example, Jurong or Yishun, the range would roughly be lower by about 150,000 to 300,000. So I would say a 4-room flat typically would be about 300 to 400,000.
Okay, just a follow-up question, right? Since we are talking about prices, if you guys didn't know that in February, a flat in Yishun, just 8 minutes away from this Yishun BTO site, was sold for $1.038 million. So that's really, really impressive. So do you think that there's such potential for this Yishun site?
When we talk about $1 million resale flats, we kind of have to look at the qualities of why they would command $1 million and above in terms of resale pricing. Typically, they are in a high floor, they're part of a large DBSS, design, build and sell scheme. They're city centre like Pinnacle at Dunstan, or they are maisonettes, jumbo flats and HDB lofts. So the one in Yishun is a jumbo flat. It's an executive HDB flat.
So in comparison with the insights from past market launches, what do you think is the projected appreciation value for all of these sites?
A good gauge is basically to look at recently MOP'd BTOs. So we have the data on 99.co where you can kind of look at the value, of different recently MOP'd BTOs, for example. And you can see how they're going for in the resale market. So for example, Gimo Edge, which is a BTO project that recently MOP'd, there's a 3-room flat that's asking for 700,000 now in the resale market. The owner likely paid about between 300 to 370,000 for the flat in 2012. So that's 10 years ago. So that's an appreciation of almost 90% gain, right?
That's impressive.
Or more. And at the time, in 2012, Star Vista was open. And then in 2015, URA announced the rejuvenation of Holland Village. That's 3 years later. And the rail corridor, which is at the backyard. So if the neighborhood has a slate of developments planned across a set of timelines, it would be good to pay attention to these development timelines in the neighborhood that you're interested in.
Let's talk a little bit more about the stack placements. During the site recce, we actually went around and we found out the best stacks that you guys can actually go for. So we won't touch a lot on the specifics. For the Alexandra View plot, go for the high floors of the south-facing stacks. Just opposite the Alexandra View stack, right? It's just low-rise buildings. But do take note that this is also where the MRT track is. If you're particular about noise, you want like peace and serenity, then probably don't go for this. Another alternative is the east-facing stack. Currently, the Delta Swimming Complex is undergoing some reno works, but it'll potentially be a low-rise building, so no problems there. For the Henderson Road, I would say go for the high floors of the north-facing stack as you get a great view of Tiong Bahru Park. So if you want to be one with nature, have that zen, then I think you'll really like this lah. For Queenstown, okay, this is quite subjective. So if you go for the west-facing stack, mid to high floors, you'll get an unblocked view of the Gimo estate. So just right opposite is just the car park, is the hawker centre and really low-rise shop houses. But then again, you'll be exposed to the afternoon sun. So is there like any tips you want to share? Like, how can you avoid this?
There are some homeowners, who like gardening, so having some sun is not too bad. There are some who will find like zip track blinds and all that to kind of block out the sun, so that's not an issue. Sometimes sun facing, but it's windy, so you have to choose between which ones are more important to you, right? And then of course there are, I think for the Queenstown one that you're mentioning, there is a particular direction. I think is it south?
Yes, the one that's reserved for high-rise public housing. Yes,
that's right. Potentially there's high-rise public housing going to be built soon, but the first few years maybe it'll be unblocked,
you can enjoy the view.
Enjoy the view. So it depends on your preference.
Let's move on to the Toa Payoh project. Okay, I personally feel that all the stacks are okay. There's one that's facing Pei Chun Public School. Do take note because it can get pretty noisy, especially during school hours. But as for the rest of the stacks, it's not that bad because it's quite a distance away from neighbouring blocks. So you are separated by a road and tall trees, so you still have your privacy without the awkwardness of looking directly into your neighbour's home. For Yishun, okay, this is quite controversial. So the Yishun site, as we know, is right next to the Yishun Health Campus. There's the Kutik Port Hospital and Yishun Community Hospital there. What are your thoughts about units being right next to the hospital? Like, is there a myth there?
The Yishun site is interesting because it has a 5-room option. Potentially could cater for applicants who wants their parents to live with them or multi-generational family. And then, these are elderly people who wants the convenience of healthcare facilities. So the Yishun option, because it's adjacent to the hospital and the community hospital, it could be something that's beneficial to such profile of homeowners, right?
Let's move on to the Jurong West one. Okay, this is probably like my favorite. You get the best unblocked view of Jurong Lake Gardens if you're facing the east. But if you go for the low floors of the east-facing stack, right, your views might be blocked because surrounding the Jurong Lake Gardens are tall trees. So, I mean, it's pros and cons. You get privacy in that sense, but then you won't get the views lah. Just a follow-up question. Do you think that choosing the right stack will actually help to make more returns in the future?
When choosing a stack, there's both the exterior elements and the interior elements, right? When you're talking about rental or appreciation. So for exterior, of course, like we've talked about it, a higher floor would be great, ideal, a windy disposition, sun direction. There was this story, I don't know whether you read about this guy who was playing with a toy gun or something where he was shooting at bottle caps at a multi-story car park. He missed and it hit nearby HDB windows. I think this was in Hougang. Probably don't choose one
near the
multi-story car park. Yeah. But beyond the exterior elements, there's also the interior, which is your space. The bigger, the better, right? Subject to your profile, of course. The layout of the rooms, where the bathrooms are facing, where the rooms are facing, the decor eventually, and the location. Is it a corner unit or a corridor unit? So all these factors will come into play when it comes to kind of valuing the appreciation of your particular apartment.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So let's touch on the prime amenities for each of the projects. Let's go down the list. We start with Queenstown.
What I like about the Queenstown project is that it's somewhere in between. It's not too close to the city, but it's accessible to the city, right? It's 8 minutes walk to Buona Vista MRT, Star Vista, the mall. Then of course you have Rochester Mall. And then its backyard, you have the rail corridor. And then of course, then you have Holland Village. For Jurong West developments that are coming up for the Jurong Lake District, the Jurong Innovation District, basically they do add on to the value of the neighborhood. It's also 10 minutes walk to Lakeside MRT. More importantly, it has a 5-room option, so very ideal for growing families. Within 1 kilometer of, for example, Rulang Primary, which is one of the more popular schools in the neighborhood. Another thing about the Jurong West one is that it's also in between Jurong East, where you have your JAM, your IMM, your J-Cube, and your Westgate. But if you go in the other direction, you got your Jurong Point, which is another huge mall, right? So it's in a very interesting location, right?
My favorite is the Jurong Lake Gardens. Also my first time there. I don't venture out to the west side that much. So I really loved it. There's, I think, 13 different attractions there.
I also want to add that from the Jurong West BTO site, if you actually go further down Yuanqing Road, there's the, I think the Taman Jurong shopping area, right? Where you have your Sheng Siong and the bowling alley. If you're a fitness buff, I think it would be good because then the park is right outside your doorstep. So you don't have to static jog at the traffic light. It's just immediate.
The awkwardness of just like then the driver's just like staring at you.
Then for Toa Payoh, it's an old town. What's interesting is that it's 12 minutes walk to Braddell MRT, but if you drive, the expressway options are there. And then of course, it's within 1 kilometer of Patron Primary, which is another right next door, right? So which is a popular school. Then we move on to Yishun, which is next to the hospital and the community hospital. It's within 10-minute walk to Yishun MRT. North Point City, I mentioned that. The Golden Village, which is the cinema.
The first multiplex in Singapore.
That's right. And then of course, you have your Chong Pang Market Food Centre, which is nearby. Then of course you have your Yishun Pond Park for fitness buffs.
Okay, so I know that Yishun have a very long and interesting history, but I think in terms of amenities, this is a clear winner. One thing that really stands out to me is Orto. I really loved it. When I went in, it felt like being in Thailand, because like with the the night market vibes, there's like prawning fishing spots, there's like a tortoise museum, trampoline parks, go-kart arenas, everything.
Last but not least, we have Bukit Merah, right, which is there are 2 sites. So the one at Alexandra View you mentioned is close to Red Hill MRT station, which is definitely a plus point. But then we shouldn't rule out the Henderson Road plot, which is closer to Tiong Bahru Plaza. For Alexandra View, you have your Red Hill Food Market, and then for the Henderson Road one, you have your Bukit Merah View Food Centre. So what would be interesting is that for the Bukit Merah projects, potentially it could become a prime location public housing, PLH designated model, which means 10-year minimum occupation period for homeowners and subsidy clawbacks among the other restrictions.
Just adding on to what you mentioned, one thing that really stood out for me is the Sprout Hub. I'm not too sure if you know where this is or what this is even.
No.
So basically, it was actually repurposed from Henderson Secondary School compound. It's really nostalgic just being there. There's like a hipster style cafe there, open store thrift shop. It really doesn't feel like you're in Singapore. I would like to mention also about the Tiong Bahru Cafe Enclave. Being a millennial, you want to tai, you want to stay near Tiong Bahru, right? So I think that's really the selling point for me. Maybe we can end off the video by you sharing some tips. What are your checklists when you want to buy a house, things to note before deciding, and what to avoid?
Tips for BTO balloters. First thing first is your financing, right? Whatever it is, when you apply for a BTO or buy a house, it's probably going to be one of the most expensive investments you're going to make in your lifetime. So financing is critical. We've done several articles about it. Your income ceiling, your other house income ceiling if you're applying with another partner, the eligibility conditions for your grants, your employment status, loan requirements using CPF and so on, and the loan that you're going to apply for. Then the second thing is basically your relationship with your partner. If you're applying, you cannot just tikam, right?
Yeah.
The reason is because if you apply and you are successful and you're invited to select a flat and you choose to pull out for whatever reasons, right? Maybe the relationship not working out or financing wise, you have an additional chance to ballot again as a first time applicant. But if you've previously been unsuccessful, whatever additional chances you've accumulated will be reset to zero. Right? But if you reject an invitation to select a flat twice, then you lose your first timer priority. Yeah, and you'll be suspended for a year. You'll be in the second timer category. Other qualities or a checklist, for example, that you should ask is it walking distance to MRT or interchange? Is it near a shopping mall, food center or market? Are you a potential growing family? Will you have a child soon? Do you plan to have a child? Then being within a kilometer of a certain school will factor into your choice. If you're a car owner, is the area normally congested? How far are the expressways? And then of course you have your regulatory, which is your if it's a prime location, public housing, PLH project, then you have to ask yourself, are you committed to living at minimum 10 years, in that project? Those are some of the tips if you're a potential applicant for this particular BTO or any BTO exercise for that matter. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we can provide a summary of all these BTO sites in terms of the USP of it. Let's talk about the Alexandra View one. So I would categorize this site as being really, really convenient to a lot of things. If you want accessibility, this is the one for you. Next is the Henderson Road. Of course, my personal favorite because you are near the Tiong Bahru Cafe Enclave.
For Bukit Merah, the two sites, Tiong Bahru, also the best of both worlds where you have your Tiong Bahru Plaza, you have your market and you have your Tiong Bahru Enclave. And then the Alexandra View one, which is, close to Red Hill MRT.
For the Queenstown, I'm quite surprised by this actually. I didn't expect that, Buona Vista have this homey, quaint little neighborhood. It feels like a normal neighborhood. It doesn't feel like you're in Buona Vista, like near the industrial hub.
For Queenstown, I can't say much beyond what we've already said. It's basically the best of different worlds.
If you work near One North or Buona Vista area, yeah, this is a great spot for you. So for Toa Payoh, I would say that if you're a foodie, this is great for you because there's 4 markets and food centers around. So you are really spot for choice. If you love the local hawker food, this is the one for you. What's
interesting is that because it's a more mature estate, there is potentially, you may have parents who are already living there and you want to live close to them. So that could be a potential BTO project to consider.
For Yishun, enough said, right? We mentioned a lot of the amenities. Lastly, for Jurong West, I would categorize this BTO site as having really great potential. Especially if you're forward-looking, right? You're thinking of all the URA master plans. So if you think about it, just one stop away, you get to all these amenities, 2 stops and you get to Jurong East development. So that's really a plus point for me.
But the Jurong West one is right next to the lake. And we know that the Jurong Lake District is going to be a huge focus for the development in the neighborhood, right? So anything that is next to the lake or has a relationship with the lake, potentially it will be very interesting. So I think the Jurong West one will be something to watch in terms of its potential.
So thank you so much. That's the summary of this BTO. Thank you so much, Terence, for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
So that's all for our 99 perspectives on the May BTO launch. Stay tuned for more episodes and we'll see you next week. Bye!